Okay, this is the first interview that I am doing. This is Sam Kissel for MGMT-5113 at Oklahoma State University. I am sitting with Michelle Nelson, the West Half Project Manager for the Southwest Light Rail Transit Project in Minneapolis. So, Michelle, thank you. And we'll start with some kind of basic questions. So, in your management experience, have you had any formal training or equivalents?
Yes, we had training right after we got hired through Met Council through our learning and development group regarding specific manager topics. So some of that was just how to address employees and how to do a little bit of coaching, kind of those topics.
And you also have your PMP, right?
Yes, I do have my PMP.
Do you think that that was beneficial in terms of managing people, or do you feel like it was more of like a resume booster?
More of a resume booster and that was more beneficial to managing the work. Maybe a little bit with managing people, but more like maybe helping them organize how to manage the work.
Cool. We'll jump to a question like that in a minute. How many people do you manage on your team?
Andy and I both collectively manage about 20 people.
Okay. How long have you been in any type of management or leadership role?
I have been a project manager, let's see here, 10, 20 years. But then in this role, about four or five.
Okay.
Where we actually manage staff.
Okay. So then I think we'll kind of get into some of the more in-depth ones to take up more of the interview itself. But what's the best management advice that you have received?
That's funny. I got that from a former coworker when I worked for a private contractor, and her advice was be firm but fair, and that was her advice for how to manage subcontractors. And that's kind of true of people too.
Yeah, I like
this
that.
is what we need to do, and let's be firm but fair.
Yeah, I really like that actually. I think that it almost piggybacks that a little bit. But so, what's your approach to like understanding your team members? Like, do you like to do things with people outside of work, or even like know things that go on with people outside of work? Or are you more of like this is a work thing, let's keep work at work kind of person?
Yeah, and that's hard to like compartmentalize. Sometimes your personal life kind of bleeds into a little bit. So it's kind of nice sometimes to know like what's going on with folks personally, because then you can kind of. So it's like I like to go out on site with some of the staff. Let's go out on site and let's go look at the work. You tell me what you're doing here. But yeah, it's been a while since we've had, some of those activities outside of work. I kind of miss those.
Yeah, definitely. Should probably be mentioned to anybody watching this that Michelle and I are both part of the construction team for a major infrastructure project. So getting out on site in this context is physically being on a construction site. That I probably should have mentioned earlier. How did you handle the transition from going from a team member to a manager?
Oh boy, yeah, and it's like. And some of it too was that, in that project manager role, I always had a superintendent or inspectors that I worked with. They didn't necessarily report to me, but I worked with them. And we relied on each other to kind of guide the work. And so then all of a sudden when you're like leading a staff, it's kind of the same thing. Where it's like you've got your subject matter experts, but now they report to you. So it's like you have a little bit more authority to, hey, we got to go this direction or whatever. I think the hardest part of that transition was, sometimes you've got to pull people in your office and go, okay, we need to guide you on, either being a better employee or a better project participant. And yeah, it just takes practice,
Sure.
to get used to having those hard conversations.
Sure. Do you think that it's kind of like, I don't know, a trial and error or like a learn by doing kind of thing?
Yeah, there's a little bit of that. And thankfully, some of the training we had, kind of before we really started the project, as far as management or leadership training, that kind of helped. Here's a good way to phrase this, or what have you. And certainly in some cases I've leaned on HR to kind of help. Hey, I've got this situation. What can we do? How do we navigate through this?
That makes sense. So you kind of touched on this before, and I know it, like I'm transitioning to like managing people. This is a big thing, but what are any differences and challenges associated with like managing people versus managing work items?
Managing work items and like managing subcontractors, it's like, nope, this is what's in the contract. Done. We'll arm wrestle and negotiate and whatever, done. When you're managing staff and people, there's a little bit more of that emotional, touchy-feely part of it. And it's like, some staff, if you sit them down and go, listen, this is not working. Here's, they'll take it and yep, nope, not a problem. Some folks, you gotta watch, they don't take constructive criticism as well. And they'll kind of turtle up. They kind of go inside of their shell. And it's like, no, I need you to keep going. I need you to understand that, okay, maybe you don't have a lot of background in this. So let's help you get that background. That's how do you get that? Coach people. You don't need to coach a subcontractor. You have a contract.
Right.
Do what you're told.
Right.
With staff, you've gotta kind of get a feel for who they are as a person, and then kind of work with that.
Right. It also sort of sounds like there's no. I think reading between the lines, something I sort of heard was contracts don't have egos.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's really interesting. That's not a way that's actually not a way that I would have thought about phrasing it, like before now.
The contractor does have an ego, but
the contractor
it's like
does.
no. It says right in here, you got to do this.
Right.
And yeah, that's exactly it with staff. Is that you can really sour a group of people, or maybe create a toxic work environment, depending upon how you address, certain people, and that's not going to be good.
Yeah, definitely. So, and I mean, it's interesting how some of these just do sort of relate to each other, but what do you think makes somebody a good leader of people?
Why, the word compassion was the first thing that came to mind, or empathy, or I don't know why those two words came to mind first, but it was like, no, leadership, empathy, and compassion. And it's like, no, it's that we're, like on this project, like we said, there's like 20 people that are contributing to the success of this.
Right.
And it's like, it's like we've got to keep that energy going, to keep everybody going. And it's like, you can, if you're a little bit compassionate about, oh my gosh, this person is overwhelmed or maybe doesn't feel appreciated, they're not going to perform as well.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's like, okay, let's make sure, kind of that we're all in this together to keep this moving. Yeah, you got to be a little bit compassionate and a little bit empathetic towards people.
Yeah, I think that those are, I mean, I think you said in a couple ways, like they're people, right? And I think most people would say we're here. We're not, we don't exist to work and to produce the most work. Like, we exist to be people.
Yeah.
And I think that makes a ton of sense, and I really agree with that. So then, would you say that, like, your ability to be empathetic and compassionate, do you think that that's one of the traits that served you best as a manager, or do you think that there are other things?
Those two certainly have. And and then the other thing that I've learned too is I'm kind of a task manager, but it's like, you got to help everybody, like what is the priority?
Mm-hmm.
And if you can get everybody else on board and go, hey, this is the vision, or this is the priority, here's how we're gonna, because otherwise, everybody's all over the place, and it's like, no, let's kind of be unified here. I think we'll be more successful. If hey, this is our priority, these are the tasks associated with that priority, kind of help keep driving people that way.
Definitely. So I think we have time for two more, and this is actually a really fun one for me to ask somebody who manages my work. But what do you think is one area that you can improve on as a manager, and why do you think that is?
I think I need to learn how to be more clear and concise with what my expectations are and like what I want. I sometimes like kind of dance around a topic a little bit, and it's maybe, and then people walk away and maybe they're a little bit confused. They don't know, like how to ask the question about, well, what is she really getting at? And
right.
But then that's hard, because some people you got to figure out how to be clear and concise and be direct with them,
right?
Without and be compassionate towards who they are as a person.
Sure.
That's hard.
Yeah.
And that just takes practice.
So then, this will be the last one. What in terms of being a manager, what does success look like to you? What makes you a successful manager?
I'm like, happiness was the first word that came to mind. And it's that the people that are out there working, that report to us, that report to Andy and I, are they happy?
Mm-hmm.
If they're, and if they're not happy, why?
Mm-hmm.
Do they feel supported by us? Can they make decisions? Do we support their decisions? Are they, is there maybe, is there something toxic going on within the team that we need to address? Is there, because if they're not happy, they're, and that affects your home life too.
Totally.
That if they're not happy, they're taking that home, and that might, upset the apple cart with the family, and that becomes a big cycle.
Right.
And it's like, oh my gosh. And if they're happy or they feel supported, I think they're more likely to communicate, share that information with, about what's going on with us, with everyone else. It's just a healthier environment.
Yeah.
And that happiness is important. That's why, that will be success.
I agree. I think that's a super good note to end. So, Michelle, thanks for taking time out of your day to
Thank
do
you.
this. I really appreciate it.
You bet.